Hey everybody, welcome to FoundFlix. On this Ending Explained, we'll be looking at the newest feature-sode in the Hulu anthology series Into the Dark, Pooka! Love when movies have exclamation points. A kind of modern twist on A Christmas Carol where a struggling actor gets a new job as the mascot for a hot new Christmas toy. That's right, Pooka. The frightening little bear doll thing that every kid is hoping to get their hands on. What does it do? Well, it talks, sort of, by repeating back what you say. But Pooka chooses what to repeat, and does so with two distinctly different personalities. Nice Pooka with friendly big blue eyes, and naughty Pooka, where his eyes turn a frightening red. But it's not scary at all. I mean, who could deny that catchy theme song? Pooka see, Pooka do. Oh, that's right. It doesn't matter what it does, I want one. Now, I haven't checked out the previous two entries of Into the Dark, but ever since seeing Pooka's bizarre visage in the show's trailer, I knew I had to see more. I ended up really enjoying the movie, because it's just weird. Overall, very weird. That's not a huge surprise though, as the movie is directed by Nacho Vigalondo, the insane genius behind other equally trippy and odd movies, Time Crimes and Colossal. His particular style is a delightfully perfect match for the material, with a visually slick, colorful look that really elevates the feel of the movie beyond the average streaming movie. But it also puts together the story in a constantly thrilling way and goes into many unexpected directions. There's quite a bit to examine with this one, so let's get cracking on Pooka, breaking down the story, the big twist, and explaining the ending. We open on vague visual elements that must be the aftermath of a car crash, red and blue lights flashing, seeing a singed Pooka doll lying on the ground, repeating the same phrase with a demonic, distorted growl. Look at all the pretty lights. This incident is the entire backbone to our lead character Wilson's story, though at this point we don't have the full context of what happened. He stands nearby, then is suddenly whisked away, lights flashing over him, and is now in an entirely new location, seeming to be confused by his surroundings and alone. Though there is a nearby neighbor, an eerie red light emanating from under the door. Rather than investigate, Wilson goes about his normal routine, taking the bus and stopping at a coffee shop, where he comes across what will turn out to be a life-changing opportunity, a casting call for a part that is scant on details, but when you're a struggling actor, you take what you can get. Returning home, oddly his key doesn't fit in the front door, calling his neighbor to be let inside, and seeing the door open again, decides to introduce himself, meeting the older woman that lives there who calls herself Red, which is not only appropriate due to her red hair, but all of the walls in her apartment bear the same color as well. Offering him a drink, she's happy to see Wilson, as she was worried she'd be spending the holidays alone. Having recently moved into the building, Red tries to ask him what brought him here, but Wilson seems confused and unsure himself as to why. Only that he's here to start over and get a blank slate. Preparing for the audition, Wilson practices lines from A Christmas Carol, the specific ones we hear recited, giving us our first major clue to the overall concept of the movie. The segment is from the portion of the story where Scrooge has his encounter with the ghost of Christmas yet to come, where he's shown visions of his potential future if he doesn't change his bah humbugging ways. Here, Scrooge laments his future, asking the ghost if the shadows of the future are predetermined or can they be changed. This is the same predicament Wilson finds himself in, which only becomes clear much later. The audition goes extremely well, offering Wilson the job on the spot, but he still has no idea what his job is exactly. He's about to find out as the producer introduces him to a new toy that is about to hit the market, and according to their research is going to tear Christmas a new asshole. That's good, I guess. The cute and quite odd looking supposed bear Pooka, and the producer wants Wilson to don a full-size Pooka suit to portray the character in public. But unlike most mascot jobs, the producer says, he would be the sole portrayer of Pooka. Wilson would be the one giving him life. Without him, he's nothing, he says. He decides to try the suit out, and moments after putting the head on, he is physically affected, wheezing and coughing, falling to his knees. He's temporarily unwilling to continue until the producer gives him an insight to their sales projections and is thusly convinced to sign on board. At home, he tries on the suit again, and it seems that he's okay at first until he suddenly goes into a rage, stomping around the apartment and breaking things, just as Wilson enters the apartment later, finding the remains of his stuff all over the place. He doesn't realize or remember that it was actually him that caused the destruction. The suit obviously has some kind of effect on its wearer, in some capacity bringing forth the dark or naughty side of Wilson, who we grow to understand has a pretty severe anger problem, the first signs of which are starting to come out now. Paying a visit to the local Christmas tree farm, he spots a woman that catches his eye, joined by her younger son, but leaves without without speaking to her. On set, it's time for Pooka's big commercial debut, and after putting together a pretty sweet commercial and nauseatingly catchy theme song, we see that Pooka has become an instant overnight success, seeing a huge line of people behind her hungry to get their hands on the hottest toy of the season. In the store, Wilson as Pooka stands before legions of children, coming up one by one to talk to Pooka and have him repeat what they say. Then a boy approaches with the earth-shattering revelation, "I like turtles." Before responding, Pooka is distracted by the same woman and child in the crowd, and this time repeats back as naughty Pooka. The sight of the woman and child bringing out Pooka's and Wilson's angry and dark side. But Wilson is still hung up on the woman, found by the producer staring at her through the window. He goes outside and meets her, getting her card for Wilson, learning her name is Melanie. Stalking her on the internet leads Wilson to an upcoming open house she's hosting, which he decides to use as a ploy to meet her. The meeting is a bit awkward, Melanie taking him on a tour, saying he could see himself living here, even imagining how he would decorate the house if it was his own. And when talking to Red about her, we can tell he is quite smitten, feeling like he can do anything since meeting her, until a loud pounding demands his attention, though Red says she can't hear it. He follows it to his apartment, where it grows more intense, seeing naughty Pooka relentlessly pounding his fist on the wall, who turns to Wilson but disappears moments later. Just as before at the pop-up when seeing Melanie, something about her when talking to Red about her triggered naughty Pooka to come out again. Even though Melanie turned down his offer to dinner at the open house, he does eventually get his date. And good for him, it goes quite well. But there's another obstacle he has to figure out to continue pursuing his relationship, getting her son Ty to like him. Though of course every kid loves presents, and thanks to his connections, Wilson gets Ty his very own Pooka, even with Pooka-themed wrapping paper. Here we also get our first hint that what we've been seeing might not be reality in the strictest sense. Wilson confusedly notices that they don't have a Christmas tree, as he thought he saw them at the farm, but she says that wasn't them. So now we already know that what we're seeing can't be taken at face value. After another day in the suit at work, it appears that Wilson is starting to become more comfortable in the suit than as himself, donning the suit and stepping out into the real world, and even going through the same routine previously seen of Wilson's, riding the bus and sitting idly at the coffee shop. Wilson is essentially escaping into Pooka, though the two are really one and the same. He returns home later and steps outside his apartment before turning his attention to Red's, his eyes turning naughty, the lights blinking erratically in the hall, as he pounds on the door and barges inside, hearing screaming, "Oh no, naughty Pooka! You shouldn't be killing people!" Oddly, Wilson is also at home asleep in his bed at the same time, hearing the sounds of Red being murdered, even though he is the one in the suit. Again, the two are connected, but Wilson forgets about his time when he puts the suit on. Yet, when checking out Red's apartment, sure he'll find her dead, she's quite alive. Woo! Well, that's a relief, but he's still concerned, worried about losing time, and thinking there's something wrong with him. Finally remembering why he moved here, to get away from the pain and from causing it. Red offering that we all make mistakes, and the only thing he has now is to make better ones in the future. Back to that Christmas Carol stuff. I told you folks, I ain't joking around. He continues to ride the high of the Pooka phenomenon, and making headway with Ty as well, buying them a glorious Christmas tree. And when learning that Melanie has planned a Pooka-themed Christmas party for Ty, Wilson plays his ace in the hole, saying that he can get the real Pooka to show up. But things turn strange, as Ty's voice distorts, asking if he is going to hurt him or his mom. Wilson waking up on the couch to police lights blinking inside throughout the house. Following the sound of dripping water to the bathroom, he comes to something covered in a sheet, revealing a mannequin with his face cracked open, black oil pouring out from the hole, and Pooka with flames in his eyes standing ominously over it. Now his reality is becoming layers and layers of nightmares. Woo boy! Things are getting dicey in here. And we see Wilson's anger start to manifest itself for the first time really, when Melanie is frustrated with him for over-promising on getting Pooka to show up at the party. And as promised, Pooka makes his grand appearance to the children's delight. Though it's not all fun and games, as naughty Pooka makes his presence known as well, grabbing and beating up a kid who harasses Ty. As no one knows Wilson portrays Pooka, he apologizes later for not being able to make the party. She questions him about who the guy was in the suit, and thinking she's blaming him, Wilson gets angry once again, and turning himself into a victim. The moment is diffused by another odd development, him seeing that the tree that they picked out has somehow vanished. But when asking Melanie about it, she only says, "What tree?" He takes this as her covering up for getting rid of it, becoming infuriated, and things getting very tense, she asks him to leave. Nice job, Wilson, you blew it! Now Wilson is becoming more dependent on the suit, the opposite of when he first put it on, heaving and coughing until putting on the mask, and it quickly calms him down. He reaches down and grabs the picture of the trio at the farm, and now the tree is also oddly absent here. Mel and Wilson holding their arms around nothing. To make things even worse for Wilson, the fervor over Pooka takes a bad turn when all the toys start to malfunction, leading to a massive recall. All of them suddenly only repeating the same one phrase over and over. Look at all the pretty lights. As a result, the public's opinion of Pooka is soured, and Wilson's meteoric rise is trounced into nothing. Pooka is done. He desperately tries to reconcile with Melanie, returning to the open house, but she's not interested, somehow vanishing entirely, leaving Wilson alone in the house. He first comes to a broken Christmas tree on its side, and the same black oil liquid begins to pour out from it, as did the mannequin. Hearing moaning and growling, he follows the sounds to find Pooka making sweet love to nobody from what I can tell. Oil pouring out of his orifices like he has a sinus infection or something. He's of course convinced he needs to reclaim the suit to feel better, breaking into its storage area and stealing it, leaving a heartfelt message for Melanie, assuring her things will be different now, and wants to start a family together. Attempting a more direct way to reach her, he leaves a Pooka with his message on it at her doorstep. Her seeing Wilson peering out from a tree across the street. A father randomly bumps into him, and Wilson is quickly set off, leading to him getting the crap kicked out of him by the dad, and really messing up the Pooka suit in the process. Poor Wilson can't get any lower, and has lost his coping mechanism of Pooka as well, meeting the producer at the bar, worried that he can't feel Pooka anymore. But the producer sets him straight, that there is no Pooka, it's just you, it's always been you. And the bar patrons, including him, all vanish as Wilson turns around. Uh-oh, this is getting weird. Defeated, he returns to the apartment building to even more bad news. The Red has just committed suicide by jumping out of the window, and when looking out the window is attacked by fiery-eyed Pooka, who holds up yet another version of that picture, this of Melanie and Ty, holding a Pooka doll, which he proceeds to tear in half and vomits more black sludge all over Wilson. He believes the meaning of tearing the photo apart was that Pooka will target them next, Wilson calling the house to warn them. Ty cuts the call short, as they are on their way to pick out a Christmas tree. So it's another trip to the tree farm where no one is around, until hearing a loud growl, Wilson grabbing an axe and continuing through the masses of trees, and fiery-eyed Pooka passes right by him. Pooka stops, and Wilson jams the axe into his gut, and strangles him with Christmas lights, the flames extinguishing in Pooka's eyes. Wilson positive that his Pooka problem is kaput. He stomps back once again to Melanie's to apologize, saying he's changed, but when looking in the window, sees instead two older guys snoozing, definitely not Melanie, and when calling her, oddly her phone number is disconnected. He happens upon her open house. Instead of the bare space of before, the room is filled with Christmas decorations, seeing pictures on the wall of Wilson, Melanie, and Tyler at various stages of their lives together as a former family, and this is their former home that they shared. And it's at this point on that the story more explicitly ventures into A Christmas Carol territory, as Wilson now is forced to watch a repeat of his most tragic memory, but this time as an omniscient observer, unable to interact with the others there, as an alternate or past Wilson enters, getting upset with Melanie and destroying the tree as referenced in Wilson's prior nightmare. Ty, nearby, sees the whole thing, tears welling in his eyes, and Wilson, desperate to make it right, promises we're gonna head down to the lot right now to get a new one, trying to convince him that the whole thing was just an accident. Our Wilson sees now that he was wrong, yelling out to Melanie to not listen to him, and he's only lying to make himself feel better. She at least doesn't let him off easy, telling past Wilson that this is the last time and things are over. They drive off, leaving our Wilson all alone to lament his past mistakes, but unable to do anything about it, sobbing in his hands and apologizing profusely. Alternate Wilson is even more aggressive now, speeding dangerously down the road. Melanie in the backseat with Ty, remarking to calm him down, look at all the pretty lights. He revs the engine harder, and there's a flash of lights as they crash into another car. Wilson regaining consciousness just in time to see his car, along with his family, explode in a ball of flames. Oh boy. He looks over to the other car in the accident, seeing Red behind the wheel with her daughter, who perishes moments later. The red and blue lights of police appear as paramedics rush to his aid. In the background, hearing Pooka as before, singed, and repeating the last thing his wife said before dying, look at all the pretty lights. Our final shot leaving us with the whole scene being watched on the sideline by our Wilson, along with his good buddy Pooka, as the echoing dog continues into oblivion. This moment with the two watching makes it clear again what the intent of the story here is. The Wilson we've been following throughout the movie is being put through a kind of trial to hopefully learn from the mistakes that he's made that resulted in losing his family. He unfortunately can't fix this tragedy, but can he at least learn the right lesson from it? As the opening of the movie begins at this same crucial time it was at this exact moment right after the crash when Wilson was transported to an alternate reality or dream state where the entirety of the movie takes place. His rise as the Pooka mascot, meeting Melanie again, and everything else was all a kind of mashup of his real past, potential present, and future, all jumbled up with a healthy dose of nightmare fuel. The purpose being to show him his life to help him make sure he will learn from his past. All right out of the pages of A Christmas Carol, and harkening back to the lines he was practicing for the audition early on, regarding if these shadows are set in stone or can be changed. And it's through a kind of alternate reset or reliving of the past that he goes through the same critical moments of his life to learn the same lesson. Now, it's hard to place what specifically from what we see represented is what actually happened, with really only the final scene with the family which he watches most likely being more or less 100% reality, a memory being replayed for our Wilson's eyes. But I would imagine the fantasy scenarios seen are more or less in line with the same overall trajectory as Wilson's real life, if the specifics are different. That he began as a struggling actor that found some success, seeing the photo of him on the red carpet at the end. And the house that they live in is pretty upscale too, listed at almost $1 million. So he had to have at least been somewhat successful. Perhaps his career took a sudden nosedive, driving him to becoming angrier and short-tempered with his family, seen reaching its apex in the tree destroying scene. This is also why the tree farm is so prominent in his fantasy, as in reality the family never made it there to get a new tree. So much of the dream centers around him actually making it there, even meeting the new Melanie there, and later getting to have that lost moment with his family, until it starts getting all weird and disappearing, echoing the reality where there was no tree. So all these concepts are represented in the fantasy to help us understand the real life situation of Wilson, where he struggles with his anger and also coming to accept his responsibility in the crash. It's thanks to his spirit animal or guiding force, the big Pooka, that he is able to begin to even approach these emotions, who even has eyes made out of headlights in addition to constantly vomiting up motor oil. Everything from his dream is inspired by elements from the crash, feeding directly into what forms the backbone of his dream story. Elements like the ever-present flashing red and blue lights, which harken to naughty and nice Pooka respectively, which are also tied to Wilson's emotions, along with Ty's singed Pooka doll, with it becoming much more important due to repeating Melanie's final words, which sink deep into Wilson's subconscious, coming up at multiple important times throughout the story. Or the paramedic who comes to help him at the end, playing the important role of the producer that cast him in his fantasy. This role-playing of sorts is even more important as it ties to his so-called neighbor Red, who really was the driver of the car they crashed into. There's mention of an officer of alcohol being involved, making it easy to blame her for killing his family. Yet the fantasy shows that she is a person too, Wilson developing a friendship with her, and that she lost someone just like him, her daughter, and indeed in reality her own life as well. That's why she's called Red in the fantasy. Wilson in real life has only seen her briefly at the scene of the crash and has no idea of her actual name, so he just calls her Red, and she is associated with the red light as well, tied to Wilson's unresolved anger. It makes sense, as he generally considers himself the victim of circumstances, he would blame her and want revenge for her drunken negligence. This we see when, while wearing the Pooka suit, he acts out on his own justice and murders her. It makes sense that he would have these kinds of angry, unresolved feelings towards her due to what happened, and by donning the suit, he can get his vengeance without actually taking responsibility, even though technically Pooka is Wilson as well. Wearing the suit for him acts as a kind of coping mechanism to start to unlock and wrangle these difficult emotions he's feeling, something Wilson is incapable of doing on his own, needing the outlet of the Pooka suit initially, because as he comes to understand by having to relive his pain and mistakes all over again, things aren't always that cut and dry. Sure, Red might have been drinking, but his anger played a role too, independently to her, and now he finally takes ownership of his own responsibility in the accident instead of playing the victim and blaming others as usual, showing us that those shadows of the future can indeed be changed. So it seems like even though it came at a very steep price, Wilson was able to learn a valuable lesson, and he should be able to avoid repeating the same doomed outcome of the past and wind up being alone, as long as he remembers to control that anger. And it's all thanks to that crazy old pal of his, Pooka. With that, we have reached the conclusion of this ending explained on Pooka. Don't forget you can send me video requests of any kind by reaching out on any of my social media accounts at FoundFlix. What did you guys think of Pooka and its ending? How are you liking Into the Dark so far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.